If you're a parent like me, you're feeling the consequences of this president's failure to take this pandemic seriously, from his constant downplaying of the importance of masks and social distancing, to his relentless pressure on schools to open without offering a clear plan or meaningful support to keep students and teachers safe. And I pray every day that no one faces longer-term consequences to this disease. But the truth is, we just don't know yet. And we simply cannot trust this president to tell us the truth about anything. Look around the world. So many other countries aren't experiencing this level of extended suffering and uncertainty. These countries were hit by the same virus as we were. They had the same kind of resources to contain it as we did. But what they didn't have to contend with was this president, a man who had every resource at his disposal, the finest medical experts, our best intelligence, and yet ignored all the advice and failed to produce a plan to provide enough tests for worried families or protective equipment for our healthcare workers. A man who knew how deadly this virus is, but who lied to us and told us it would just disappear. Who, in the greatest crisis of our lifetimes, doubled down on division and resentment, railed against measures that could have mitigated the damage, and continues to hold massive events without requiring masks or social distancing, knowingly exposing his own supporters to a dangerous virus. Today, more Americans have died from this virus than died in the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, and Korea combined. Take all those lives bravely sacrificed and double it. 7 months later, he still doesn't have a plan for this virus. 7 months later, he still won't wear a mask consistently and encourage others to do the same, even when those simple actions could save countless lives. Instead, he continues to gaslight the American people by acting like this pandemic is not a real threat. And yet, even in the face of all this incompetence, Americans keep digging deeper, finding new reserves of strength, doing whatever it takes to get through this. And his willful mismanagement of the COVID crisis is just one example of his negligence. When wildfires rage out west, he says nothing for weeks. When Americans of all backgrounds peacefully protest racism and police violence, he disparages them, yet eggs on heavily armed militias. When our heroic young men and women answer the call and give their lives for our country, he calls them suckers and losers, and publicly mocks Gold Star families and prisoners of war. All this from someone who, as a wealthy, connected young man, avoided military service. By contrast, Joe Biden has lived his life guided by values and principles that mirror ones that most Americans can recognize. I know Joe. He is a good man who understands the struggles of everyday folks. And we can trust Joe Biden to name Supreme Court justices who follow in the footsteps of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, judges who understand that justice and equality aren't theoretical ideas, but concrete matters that affect our healthcare, our livelihoods, and our bodies. This is the kind of leader our nation deserves. But right now, the president and his allies are trying to tap into that frustration and distract from his breathtaking failures by giving folks someone to blame other than them. They're stoking fears about Black and brown Americans, lying about how minorities will destroy the suburbs, whipping up violence and intimidation, and they're pinning it all on what's been an overwhelmingly peaceful movement for racial solidarity. It's true. Research backs it up. Only a tiny fraction of demonstrations have had any violence at all. So what the president is doing is once again patently false. It's morally wrong. And yes, it is racist. But that doesn't mean it won't work. As a Black woman who has, like the overwhelming majority of people of color in this nation, done everything in my power to live a life of dignity and service and honesty, the knowledge that any of my fellow Americans is more afraid of me than the chaos we are living through right now, well, that hurts. It hurts us all. It is a heaviness that sits on our hearts. So I want to appeal for some empathy here too. I want everyone who is still undecided to think about all those folks like me and my ancestors, the moms and dads who worked their fingers to the bone to raise their kids right, the teenagers who wear hoodies while working hard to get their diplomas, the millions of folks who look like me and fought and died and toiled as slaves and soldiers and laborers to help build this country. Put yourselves in our shoes for just a moment. Imagine how it feels to wake up every day and do your very best to uphold the values that this country claims to hold dear: truth, honor, decency, only to have those efforts met by scorn, not just by your fellow citizens, but by a sitting president. Thankfully, we have the chance to elect a president who can meet this moment, a leader who has the character and the experience to put an end to this chaos, start solving these problems, and help lighten the load for families all across the country. And that leader is Joe Biden. After seeing the presidency up close for 8 years, maybe the most important thing I've learned about the job is this: how a president focuses their time and energy in office is a direct reflection of the life they've lived before entering the White House. A president's policies are a direct reflection of their values. And we're seeing that truth on display with our current president, who has devoted his life to enriching himself, his family, and other wealthy people he truly understands, cutting taxes for the rich and big corporations, cutting regulations that protect regular families from getting taken advantage of by people like him, cutting his friends loose from prison time. Search your hearts and your conscience, and then vote for Joe Biden like your lives depend on it.